Welcome to the Explainer. Every country's economy has these huge, game-changing moments. Today, we're diving into three of them for India. Three critical turning points that completely reset its course and built the nation we see today.
Okay, let's jump right in. We're starting in 1991, and it's a moment of pure crisis. India was literally on the verge of economic collapse. We're talking about the very real possibility of defaulting on its international loans.
Just how bad was it? Well, get this. The country's foreign exchange reserves had dropped so low they could only pay for 3 weeks of essential imports. 3 weeks. That's how dangerously close to the edge things were.
So, this pressure cooker of a crisis, it forced their hand. It became the catalyst for a massive pivot. The very first of the three major turning points we're going to explore today. Each one a dramatic response to an incredible challenge.
But before we talk about the fix, we've got to understand what was broken. How did India even get to this point? Well, at the heart of the problem was this incredibly restrictive system that everyone called the license rod.
Imagine, for decades, the Indian economy was just trapped in this complex web of government control and endless red tape. You needed a permission slip for pretty much everything. And as you can guess, this system just choked innovation. It created massive inefficiencies, leading to a huge budget deficit and runaway inflation that finally triggered the 1991 crisis.
With its back completely against the wall, and with a bit of a nudge from the IMF, the government rolled out this incredibly radical set of reforms. And this wasn't just some small tweak. It was a total overhaul of the economy, known by just 3 letters, LPG.
So let's break that down. First up, the L, liberalization. This was a direct assault on that whole license raj we just talked about. The government basically took a hatchet to the list of industries that needed a license, freeing up businesses from bureaucratic chains and just unleashing the potential for growth.
All right, then we have P for privatization. This was all about opening up sectors of the economy that used to be reserved only for the state. The government started selling off parts of public companies, which encouraged private investment and, frankly, brought in more accountability.
And the final piece of the puzzle, G, globalization. India basically flipped its whole strategy. It went from looking inward to looking outward. And to give you a sense of just how big this shift was, think about this. Import taxes, which were sky high, in some cases over 300%, were slashed all the way down to 35%. The doors to the world were literally thrown open.
So when you look at it side by side like this, you can really see, wow, this wasn't just a change in policy. It was a complete and total change in economic philosophy. India moved from being a closed, state-controlled system to an open, market-driven one.
Okay, so let's jump forward a couple of decades now. We're at our second major turning point. See, the boom from the 90s, well, it brought its own set of challenges. And it became pretty clear that another big shift was necessary, this time to make sure that growth was reaching everybody.
Here was the issue. All those benefits from the 91 reforms, they hadn't really trickled down to everyone. A huge slice of the population was still totally locked out of the formal financial system. So this next wave of policies was all about fixing that.
A massive part of this was a program called the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. We're talking about one of the biggest financial inclusion projects in the world. It led to over 42 crore. That's 422 million new bank accounts being opened. It was like handing a financial key to millions of people who never had one before.
And then, to get money into the hands of small business owners, you had the Mudra scheme. What was so smart about this was that it provided vital loans without needing collateral. It cleverly tiered the loans. Shishu for just starting out, Kishore for growing, and Tarun for expanding further. It supported these tiny businesses every step of the way.
And then came a really big one, the Goods and Services Tax, or GST. This replaced a super complicated mess of different state and national taxes with just one single tax. The whole idea was to create one unified market across the entire country and just make it simpler to do business.
And that brings us to our third and most recent turning point. This one was triggered by a shock that rattled the entire planet, the COVID-19 pandemic. And this crisis forced yet another economic pivot, this time towards self-reliance.
You know, the pandemic really laid bare just how fragile global supply chains could be. So the response wasn't to go back to the old closed-off economy of the past. Not at all. It was a strategic pivot, focused on building more resilience, more efficiency, and more fairness right there within India.
This whole philosophy was captured in the Atmanirbhar Bharat, or Self-Reliant India Initiative, and it's built on these 5 core pillars. We're talking a quantum leap for the economy, not just baby steps. Using infrastructure to define modern India, creating tech-driven systems, and really leveraging the country's unique demography to power demand.
Now, one really practical reform here was a new unified definition for what counts as a micro, small, or medium enterprise, an MSME. By using both investment and turnover, it just made things way simpler. And what was huge was that it applied the same rules to both manufacturing and service businesses for the very first time. That made it so much easier to get support where it was needed.
And this pivot wasn't just about definitions. It involved some really bold strategic moves. Take defense manufacturing, for example. The limit for foreign direct investment was bumped up from 49% all the way to 74% through the automatic route. A really clear signal that the goal was to boost domestic production in a supercritical industry.
So there you go, an incredible journey in 3 massive shifts. First, from the absolute brink of collapse in '91, which led to opening up to the world, then a new focus after 2014 on bringing everyone into the fold, and finally, this 2020 pivot towards building up internal strength and resilience.
You know, each one of these moments was a direct reaction to a major crisis, and each one totally rewrote the country's economic story. From near bankruptcy to globalization to self-reliance, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the next chapter for India's economy going to be?